Good evening, everyone. I welcome you all to this highly anticipated launch of the Indian Commoner Forum. I am Pooja Chandran and I'm a part of the Indian Commoner team. So commons, as we all know, are both natural and cultural resources that are shared and used collectively by a community. माने जो ना तेरी है ना मेरी है जो साझा है जो सबकी है वही शामलात है वही commons है. So the Indian Commoner is a platform that aims to capture and highlight this intricate relationship that communities share with their commons. It's a space where we can connect with other commoners, learn from each other's experiences, and uphold the promise of commons. So today, as we officially launch this forum, we will walk you through the website and have esteemed panelists shed light on their experiences, ideas, and insights. So a couple of quick reminders at this step would be to ensure that your mics are on mute. And if you have any comments or questions for any of us, it would be great if you can write them on the chat box so that our team can collate it. So I'd like to start the session by first inviting Dr. Purnendu Kavuri to share a few words regarding the forum. Purnendu sir has worked extensively in the field of pastoralism and common pool resources. He's currently the director of Center for Social Ecology. He's the coordinator of the Indian Commoner Forum and has been the pillar of strength for the forum team. The floor is all yours, sir.
Thank you, Pooja. I have the role of, first of all, thanking everybody who has contributed to our reaching this point. The idea of the Indian Commoner almost is now, we began working on this about 2.5 years ago. And it was encouraged and supported by the then director of FES, Jagdish. Also, others in the FES were very much part of the process of thinking and developing it. Field teams in different parts of the country and study team in FES itself. We also had a lot of obligation to many people outside of the FES across the country with whom we tested and talked about the forum in its various stages of development. And to each of them, I'm very, very grateful for having supported us. I cannot thank our designers enough. They began working with us about 2 years ago. They began working for us, but eventually now they're working with us. So Arushi and team, I'm deeply grateful to all of you. I'm particularly grateful to the board of FES and to the board of Center for Social Ecology for having supported and encouraged this. I do hope we can repay the confidence that you have shown in us. The launch of the website, the launch of the Indian Commoner is, as you can imagine, a beginning of a journey rather than the end of a journey. And I'm extremely grateful to all of you who have joined here. I believe my job is not just to perhaps thank everybody, but also necessary, but I also have to share a few thoughts on why this forum. In fact, I was asked this question by the chairman of FES, Mrs. Thorat, a little while ago, and I have been thinking about it. I think in a general way, there are 4 different points that I would like to make as to, in a way, justify why we have gone through this entire exercise. First of all, I think we need the idea of the forum. The forum is an instrument for helping us see. Most of us don't see the commons, like the child who suddenly realizes that she or he has been speaking prose all the while without knowing it. The commons are all around us, but we don't know how to see it. We have been trained or oriented to see fences, boundaries, walls, and all that lies between these demarcations are empty spaces, devoid of content. I think the forum is a space where we can learn how to see. Once people start learning how to see the forum, they then recognize forum commons everywhere, because commons are everywhere. The problem is we have neither the vocabulary nor the orientation to open our eyes to information that we have, in a way, systematically lost the ability to notice. So I see this as an opportunity, as a space where we learn to see. The second thing I would point out, I would say, is that I see the Indian commoner as a space not just to see, but also to see within, to understand the commoner in all of us. If I might speak informally, I might, supposing I ask a person on the street, what is a commoner? There is a good chance that they would not have an answer. Perhaps somebody might say, Aam Aadmi, or a common man. Now, the idea of an Aam Aadmi is a statistical one. It's a person of an average man. But the commoner is not an average person. Nobody, in fact, is an average person. The commoner is, in some ways, a relationship that people have through entitlements, through relationships that are mediated through institutions. They are embodied in specific contexts. And this whole idea of a commoner, not as a statistical notion, but as an entity or as an individual with entitlements, rights, responsibilities, contexts, relationships, has completely disappeared. And I believe that the Indian commoner is a space where we start putting information and content and start recognizing the commoner in each one of us. So this is a second point I think I wanted to suggest, that this is how I see the Indian commoners having a role. A third thing is that our commons are an informal space, which is not to say that they are not demarcated by rules or that there are no institutions, but they are largely mediated through informalities. And I wanted this Indian commoner to be an informal space. In my original imagination, as we have discussed, and it's become a collective undertaking, these were some of the things that we were talking about. Many of us who are working on the commons are in the know of information, of practices, of cultural values, attitudes, norms that never make it to reports, that never make it to studies, because they don't fit into the kind of information that formal documentation has. I believe this is very important. This is a sort of documenting the ethnography, the folklore around our understanding of commons. So I want it to be a space where people can talk informally, write about their experiences. It should also be a space, the informality will create an opportunity for people from different backgrounds to talk to each other. A shepherd has a view of commons which is very different from an artisan. A person living in a city has a very different view from somebody living in a provincial town. I believe informality can help us get past boundaries. And to that extent, this should be a space where we can gradually, collectively make a lot of evidence building through simple additive material that gradually becomes more than the sum of its parts. Lastly, I would just say that a critical opportunity that I think the Indian commoner offers is that of scaling. Many of us who have worked in research and civil society in regions are tied down to particular localities and contexts, and we often are not able to scale our understandings. The lockdown has provided us with an opportunity to engage in conversations on a scale which did not exist before. We are all confident that we can talk on a scale. Scale can be a bad thing if it is done in ways that are, industrial and repetitive, but it can also be a creative opportunity for allowing people, encouraging people from very different parts of the country, from different contexts, from different backgrounds to talk to each other and generate an understanding, help us create something that becomes not just living, but which becomes owned by those who start populating this space, and then it develops its own identity and take it in a way forward. I'm hopeful and I'm also ambitious that we should think on scale and try and see that the Indian commoner becomes a space where diverse minds, intellectual traditions, peoples, professions all begin to engage in a conversation. Pooja, thank you. I yield my time.
Yes, thank you, sir. I'd like to now invite Panjan, one of our core team members whose dedicated efforts have brought the forum alive for us. She's going to take us through and give us a brief walkthrough of the Indian Commoner Forum and show us everything that it has to offer. So Panjan, whenever you're ready, please take it away.
Thank you, Pooja. And thank you, sir, for that very insightful introduction. Nayantara, may I please request you to share your screen? We would like to take you all through the website a little bit in detail to show the various components and the structure. The design of the forum has been intentionally kept simple and easily navigable so that it is accessible even to entry-level users. Since we intend to reach out also to community members and people working at the grassroots who might not be as tech savvy. Also, the website will be translated eventually in other regional languages. Right now, in its present form, it is in English and Hindi languages currently. What you see on the screen is the homepage of the website. The faces that you see on the screen are of some very prominent people from various fields who have influenced the way of thinking about human nature relationships broadly and about commons in specific. And the collage of these people is kind of a tribute to their work and their ideas. And it is also in some way symbolic of the diversity of perspectives that the forum intends to bring out. As Purnendu sir has mentioned, the forum, Indian Commoner Forum, is part of the larger Promise of Commons initiative and is premised on the three principles of security, sustainability, and sovereignty. Then further down the discussion forum itself, the recent topics that people have created and the conversations could be viewed from here, and you could go to the forum directly from here. You could see the kinds of conversations and the topics that people have created. You could read and respond to the conversations. Going back to the landing page again, we didn't want to restrict the website to just another general online discussion forum. And so there are some other sections which would enrich these conversations on the forum, like this section on what are commons, who is a commoner, and purpose of the forum. The what are commons page gives a brief introduction to commons and commoning, especially for those who may not be well versed or who may be new to these terms and this vocabulary on commons. So it gives a brief overview of commons. And then there is who is a commoner page. Here we have a fun quiz to see how much of a commoner you are. So it has some very simple basic questions from our day-to-day lives and activities, which are in some ways examples of commoning. So I would urge you all to take this quiz individually at your own pace and see how much of a commoner you are. The idea that we wanted to get across is that irrespective of where you are located or what you do, we are all commoners and we are all enjoying the legacy of commoning. And then finally, the purpose of Indian Commoner page, which Purnendu sir has already spoken about. We come back to the landing page. There is a resource section which has a curated set of videos on commons from around the world. And finally, on the homepage, you could also check out discussions happening across different states of the country. So say if you're interested in reading about Rajasthan, you click on it and you will be able to see and participate in the discussions about commons in Rajasthan and other states likewise. So that was the homepage of the forum. Let's get further inside the website. We have these 7 themes. In order to curate effective discussions and to avoid chaotic conversations, we felt a need to provide a structure to the forum. This structure is based on the different kinds of approaches towards commons. It is issue based and it also gives a holistic perspective of looking at commons. Further, if you go into the themes, for example, conversion of commons, it gives a brief description of the theme itself. And the themes also have been organized into sub-thematic areas. So you can see the list of sub-themes under that particular theme. And further, you can see the resources under that theme. If you go into one of the sub-thematic areas, let's say infrastructural projects here, you will be able to read all the discussions that come under that sub. You could respond to the discussion and also you could start a topic of your own. The idea is while posting something, you have to choose between the different sub-thematic areas. You can select one option from the drop down given. And you have to reflect on while posting which sub-theme your post fits into the most and submit your post accordingly. There are different modes. It's not necessary to write longish paragraphs. You could also post pictures, audio recordings, or short video clips, which could also act as conversation starters. So you submit and your post is created. And then there is the resources section, which has videos, podcasts, and literature readings, so on, which have been classified thematically based on the themes which we just saw. The resources have also been classified according to the different levels of engagement. So as you can see, there are 3 levels: beginner, intermediate, and advanced levels of resources. And you can select one of these according to your interest. Apart from this, there is also a dedicated section on law and regulation. Yeah. All the resources like laws, policies, and acts have been compiled. We have tried to build a public archive of these resources, and there are different kinds of filters to make it easy to navigate. There are filters based on location, based on subject, and based on the type of resource itself. And based on your selection, it will filter out what you need. Again, to bring the legal framework and to bring the laws closer to people, we are working on some features to make it easier for people to access these resources, like FAQ page, where we are going to answer a set of basic questions for all states and give elementary information in a bite-sized way. So this is work in progress. Right now we have it for Rajasthan, and similar FAQs would be there for all the states eventually. Then there is an activity section where people can share their audiovisual entries like longer videos or podcast series, and we publish it over here. There is a workshop page where you can get updates about different workshops and webinars and other events concerning commons happening around, and it gets updated over here. Finally, there is a people section where you can access your profile, you can see who the other forum members are, IC team, and so on. So this is it of the website. Over to you, Pooja. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Kanjan, for the detailed walkthrough. So now the floor is open for discussions for each of our esteemed panelists who would graciously agree to be with us and tell us what commoning has meant to them. I first invite Usha Thorat ma'am to shed light on the vision of the Promise of Commons initiative and the Indian Commoner. So Usha ma'am has had a storied career, having been the Deputy Governor of the RBI and later setting up the Center for Advanced Financial Research and Learning, and also serving as its director from 2011 to 2014. She's currently the chairperson of the Foundation for Ecological Security. Usha ma'am, whenever you're ready. You're on mute, ma'am.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Pooja, for this, inviting me for this forum. And I'm really, really delighted that we have finally, it's up and going, the Indian Commoner. Purvendu, I'm grateful to you and your center for having, put so much effort and work in it, along with the FES team, and getting it up there, because it has been a dream that we have been looking at for the last couple of years at least. I think it's a great day on this Earth Day. I think it's very appropriate that this particular forum is being launched, because the whole issue of man and environment, man and nature, our relationship with the Earth as a planet, all these things have been close to the heart of all of us here who are participating in this particular launching of the Indian Commoner. I think there are very eminent people who've been working in this area far longer than I have, basically coming from a banking and finance. Extremely interested in ensuring that the dialogue on commons goes far beyond what FES has been doing in the last 20 years. And I think that dialogue is something that this Indian Commoner hopes to enhance greatly. And like Purnendu says, really get it on to scale and permeate the thinking, because we don't realize the number of people and the communities and the large population, especially in rural area, who are really dependent on commons, and what the commons depict in terms of all kind of issues around poverty, inclusivity, participation, gender, you name any aspect in development. And I think the commons is something that is vitally important. And unless we address it in all its ramifications, we would not be doing justice to furthering the relationship between man and his environment. I really am happy that there is this space that we have, created, which will help people to share and participate their knowledge. And while doing so, I think a number of objectives does get served. Clearly, one of it is, building resilience. Building resilience because we know that climate change is going to, and loss of biodiversity is having a huge impact on vast populations who are really marginalized. So while the responsibility for net zero, all that may be there on the advanced countries, the millions and millions of people who are going to get impacted are really in locations such as in India. And therefore, globally, that leadership for building up resilience of communities to be able to deal with this whole enormous issue, has definitely got to be taken. And there are various ways in which public policy can be influenced and local practices can be changed in order to build resilience. And I think sharing of knowledge and sharing of local practices, sharing of all kinds of, like you say, the local ethnic or the folk knowledge is something that is, I really expect to come out of it. The second aspect, which I'm really hoping, is this whole inclusivity, this whole impact of climate change, impact of all this on, women, and the burden that is going to be really coming on women, and women's participation in this decision making to deal with their livelihood and their environment, I think is something that we should further. And this is why it's really, I mean, I really wish we could have, the whole dialogue could be in local language and should really focus on the local languages so that people, I mean, while English would really help to make this more a global thing. I think within the country, I'm really happy that, as was explained, we have sections for the different states, and we should be trying to communicate in the local languages. And soon, I hope the Indian Commoner will move from just Hindi to various other languages that we have. I also feel that the concept of commons is something that to communicate the concept is much easier when you do it in terms of local idioms, which really depict the commons. And otherwise, we are sort of driven to explaining it in terms of wasteland, revenue land, pastoral land, forest land, and so on. But the idea that these, the access and the entitlements are really significant. Of course, we do have the very important judgments on this, and we have lots of other rules and regulations. And I'm very happy to see that section on the law, because I think ultimately, if you have to establish entitlements and rights, one has to work with the local panchayats and then at higher level bodies, so that one makes sure that communities have the rights and have the ability to be able to derive the livelihood from the commons, and also to be able to create that environmental sustainability. I don't have too much more. I'm waiting to hear from the others, but I'm extremely happy that today is a day for us to celebrate. It is Earth Day, and it is today that we have launched this Indian Commoner. And I congratulate the entire team who has put in so much work for the last 1.5 to 2 years, led by Professor. And I'm extremely grateful to you, Professor Kavuri, for this, creating this and putting so much of your passion and commitment to this. And the FES team, of course, various people are here. Rahul, I can't see, but I'm sure he's there in the scene somewhere. Jagdish, I know, is here. The thinking has started. Sanjay may not be available today, but I'm really happy that we're getting going today. Thank you. Pooja.
Yes, thank you so much, ma'am. Now I invite Ashok Sarkar sir, who's a professor from Azim Premji University. He teaches on the political economy of land in India and development and local democracy and development in India. Sir also leads the Center for Local Democracy at APO. Sir, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, good evening to all of you.
Sorry, Ashok, just 1 minute. Pooja, want to interrupt. I just want to tell you that we have here Nitin Desai, another board member from the FES. I don't know whether in the beginning Professor introduced him, so I'm very happy that I could see him here at the inaugural of this Indian Commoner. Thank you, Nitin. Go on, Ashok, please.
I would like to thank you, Mr. Desai. Thank you. It's a privilege that you have come today. I'm so happy that you have taken an interest in our endeavor. Thank you.
Right. Firstly, a huge thanks to Punendu and his team, and also FES, Jagdish, and everyone. I was looking at this site from yesterday a number of times, almost gone through all the pages, and I found it so enriching and so diverse in its content, in its approach, as well as what it intends to do. And also a great day to launch this. I was thinking of the word earth today, and I was thinking, what does the word earth means to us? And the two words that were coming to my mind all the time is, one is share and one is care. On the other hand, I was thinking, what is the more dominant word that we have been accustomed to? And I found that word is globe. And I was thinking, okay, what does globe means to us? And somehow the word came to my mind was conquest. Now, that's why probably this is a great day to launch this, because what Indian Commoner intends to do is to bring all the actors, stakeholders, players, particularly people who are working on the ground everywhere across the country and beyond into this conversation on the question of what commons mean to us, what commons is, and how does that affect our lives and all that. My interest on this developed way back on a very interesting intervention that we were doing on in those times. That was on social forestry, where thanks to this national program 17, 18 years ago, we were facilitating self-help groups, other women's groups, panchayats, youth clubs, or farmers clubs to plant, thousands and thousands of saplings on most of the land that belonged to government, whether it is PWD land or irrigation department land or other lands. And eventually what we realized was that when some of these and many of these saplings grew into trees 10 years later, 7 years later, 15 years later, there was this tussle that started occurring between the departments and the people, both of which were claiming the resource itself. And we realized this is a thing to be addressed. So the people start saying that, okay, we planted the trees, so this belongs to us. And the department said, you planted the tree on our land, so this belongs to us. And we realized that this is where the battle between state and private interests versus the common interest starts happening. And we did something, we talked to the departments and we came to an understanding in an area, this was in West Bengal, where there would be a clear separation of the access and withdrawal and other things on the roads and the trees between the people and the department. Of course, thereafter, when we were working on land from Landesa, and I see my ex-colleague Sanjay here in this program as well, we didn't deal directly with the question of commons, except in certain places. But we came across so many different issues that concerned us on commons, whether it was land, whether it was forest, whether it was habitat, even on some of the issues around which, particularly as Professor Thorat has said, women's access to land in particular. So, I mean, that remained with me. Even in this center, when we're the Center for Local Democracy, where we are trying to work on deepening and widening democratic values and practices on the ground in certain parts of the country, particularly central India. One of our concerns is definitely the question of governing the commons. And this is in Jharkhand, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, parts of Rajasthan, Gujarat. And we find that is a question that is intricately linked with how to govern, how to really work on local democratic issues, and what are the choices people make on those those resources. So Indian commoner, I mean, I would say that the more people converse in this platform, and the more people can converse in vernacular, the more people can converse in their own languages about their own contexts. And with this, so many different sub-themes that I find, I think there are about 27 sub-themes I could see. There are so many things to talk about. So I would really urge everyone to spread this word everywhere and to make this particular platform really vibrant and going. And with that, I will stop here. Thanks, Punendu, once again for having me here in this. I feel privileged. And over to you, Pooja. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Ashok sir. I would like to now invite Jagdish sir, who was the Chief Executive of the Foundation for Ecological Security from its inception till 2020. He's currently an entrepreneur in residence at the Omidyar Network and is on the advisory board at the Dakshin Foundation. Jagdish sir, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Pooja. I'm sorry, I'm speaking to you all from my phone. I live in a small village and there seems to be a power cut. So I'm sorry, I'm not coming on the screen. Punendu, thank you very, very much for inviting me onto this. Nice to see Mrs. Thorat, Mr. Nitin Desai after a while. A pleasure to be on the panel with them. And also several other folks. I see Gracia there. I see Kalyan Paul, who was in the initial stages of the Tree Grows project, which was the genesis of Foundation for Ecological Security. We have Rajni, we have John Kurian, many, many people. Nice to be talking when all of you are around. When Purnendu, if you remember the discussions about 2.5 or 3 years ago about the Indian commoners, we knew pretty well that the problem with the commons is not just the commoners who are struggling with the human and the nature connect. It seems to be happening from the larger society. The belief systems, the socioeconomic drivers, the political pulls, the larger system is causing on the local systems. And unless the narrative shifts within the larger society, it is only a matter of time because commons get individualized or totally controlled by governments. So how do you create this space? And the space is not just the physical commons, it's the narrative. It's bringing in the socio-ecological narrative into day-to-day lives, not only of scholars, not only of think tanks and policymakers, but essentially people who are living close to villages, people whose decisions are having an impact on villages or on natural systems. This is the body that we wanted to address, and I'm so happy to see this actually coming to fruition. And congratulate Pooja, Nantara, Naveen, FES team in bringing this out. When I was going through this, and I should say that I only glimpsed through it last night, I would go through it more carefully. But when I was glimpsing this, I was reminded about an experience. Yeah, I was drifting into an experience when I was going through the website last night, and my experience around working with a village, a tribal village in South Andhra Pradesh, Battinigarpalli Tanda, 18 houses, tribal, semi-literate, I would say hardly literate, but very wise, very educated. Their entire story was around trees, birds, and butterflies, and water and soil. In fact, they called the closest they came to when they wanted to describe about resilience or sustainability, the local word for them was peace, shanti. They said shanti, that's the word for them, because they didn't have in their dictionary resilience or sustainability as a word. What I could understand from their ways of acting, when we take a discussion to the village late in the nights, everyone is to repeat. If I had to say a story, I would, again, the person sitting next to me would say the same story again, add a nuance to it, put a challenge on it, and would say his connect to the system. And so on, all the 18 people who were there would keep talking about the same story, but giving it a twist, adding a nuance, challenging it a little further, internalizing it, and also building in a collective agreement on whatever decision that they were taking. The way I was seeing this Indian commoner was also something of that nature. And probably this is, at this point in time, it is in English and Hindi, but when it goes to local idiom, I hope it serves a purpose where village people with their videos, with their storytelling, could actually challenge the narrative on commoning. By that time, again, saying it's not, I feel desperately that we'll have to move from this excessive individualization or government control into a narrative where collective spaces are actually available for civil society to decide upon their futures. I also see a big parallel in this, in how the commoner, Indian commoner, could actually develop the rules of the game in its functioning, in its very functioning, because this is another commons, a knowledge commons that is under creation. And how do we develop the rules of game in order to define, in order to self-regulate ourselves? I think we'll come to that in the panel later on. I also wish to, talking about this individualism and state control, I think the larger drivers that we are seeing, where there is a degree of incentive being offered to self-regulate, are coming from technology or from market. And whenever there is an individual action which is going beyond the individual realm towards the society, it is often labeled as altruism, which is a part of the game, But I think we will have to question that it's not only altruism, but it is our a very existence, the individual existence, which is only possible within a collective realm. I think we will have to reposition that in our discussion somewhere. And I would urge, and because I'm going to be on this team, I would like to take the Indian commoner into defining this individual realm and the collective realm and trying to see the interactions there. Last point is the challenges that we face in commons are both within the say the village or within us, as well as the challenges that come from externalities. Yeah, commons unfortunately have to face both these challenges. Typically in villages work that we in FES used to do, it was always the challenges within the village, the bigger man and the less voices woman, or the Dalit who gets marginalized. I see the Indian Commoner Forum could also play an expression of power hierarchies and how power plays out in the definitions, in the narrative that we create. And it is going to be challenging for us to how do we organize ourselves, how do we govern ourselves, and maybe also shift the agency to those who don't usually speak up much, or who shift the agency towards where power is somewhat disenfranchised. How could the Indian Commoner Forum contribute towards the shift is something that I would like to be a part of. Thank you very much and look forward to this journey.
Thank you so much, sir. That was really inspiring. Now we cordially invite Neema Pathak ma'am, who's a member of Kalpabridge, where she coordinates the Conservation and Livelihoods Program. She has also been a part of the team coordinating the National Community Forest Rights Learning and Advocacy process since 2011. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Pooja, and thank you, Purnendu, and the entire team for calling me for this. It's such an honor actually to be speaking with this distinguished panel. And also there are so many people in the audience who have been an inspiration for me and people of my generation. So such an honor to be here. So thank you so much. Fortunately, like Jagdish, I'm also one of those fortunate ones who still has limited electricity and limited internet. So I will put on my video hopefully after I finish speaking for a while. So first of all, many congratulations to all of you. I think this is such a great forum. I went through it in quite a bit of a detail over last few days. Sorry. And I understand that to be able to create such a diverse, vast, and yet meaningful content takes a lot of resources and support. So many congratulations to also organizations who have supported financially and technically this endeavor. So I think we all understand, and all the speakers have said that in these times of digital interactions and expressions, there is no overemphasizing the need of a forum on the commons. All the economic, political, social processes that we see around us these days, which are more divisive, which are pulling us, pushing us as a society towards individualism or privatization of resources, of everything. So I think in this context, this forum becomes extremely important to provide visibility to the fact that these commons in all their diverse forms have existed for such a long time, have sustained large part of humans and non-human natures, and continue to do so, because these are living commons, as Purnendu was saying. And also, I think it's extremely important to give visibility to these commons because of our current biodiversity crisis and climate debates that are going on. Because if we really as a society are looking forward to some meaningful solutions to the crisis that we are facing, then the future pathways we understand will be coming from people who still continue to live in these commons and manage, govern, conserve, nourish these. I think because of this forum will give a lot of hope and inspiration to a lot of young people today who are otherwise quite in a state of depression because they feel pretty hopeless about their own future because of what they see around them. Perhaps it will inspire them to connect with themselves, their own communities, and communities and commons of the others. There is so much on this forum that speaks to real and meaningful nature-based solutions towards current loss of biodiversity and climate resilience, as against what we are hearing continuously through the COPs, all the false nature-based solutions to climate change, to biodiversity loss. I feel very strongly that this portal must become a very important resource for those engaging in national and global biodiversity and climate debates and discussions. And I think it will also become a very important tool for the climate leaders, the conservation leaders, which are the communities which reside and still engage very strongly with these commons. Here, I would also like to mention a couple of other initiatives, like there is a forum that Kalpavriksh and some other organizations have also been engaged with. So there is an effort to create a portal on efforts of local communities and indigenous people on which are nourishing and conserving their own commons and the biodiversity therein. And there is another effort, another portal, which we call the Vikalp Sangam, which attempts to bring together the efforts of the alternative ways of beings of people across India. I find a lot of complementarities in these three forums. I think somehow, while retaining their individual spaces, they could provide a greater holistic view together if we can figure out ways of linking them and strengthening each other somehow without necessarily repeating too much of the content. Coming back to the forum itself, I think I really was very inspired by the different ways of expression that this forum has tried to create. I mean, definitely through writings, but more importantly through photos, videos, art forms, audios. And I think that's also the intention, as you were mentioning, Purnendu earlier on. So I think basically I found this as a digital space on commons, which sort of excites all your five senses. You know, you can, your visual senses, your auditory senses, but you can also, there's a sense of being able to smell, feel, sort of taste the flavors of the commons. And I think that's very, very valuable to make it that exciting space for people to engage with it. I think there are many, many elements, as all the speakers mentioned. It's so vast, so diverse, and so in depth. So it's difficult to sort of speak to all the elements of the forum, but I would particularly speak to two. I think in terms of the governance and management of the commons, there is a lot of material available. There are a lot of experiences of the local people themselves and others available. But by kind of bringing a lot of that together in one forum here, and also providing a space for creating debates and discussions around them, and hopefully which will also engage people from a diversity of backgrounds, including local to policymakers. I feel there is a very strong sort of opportunity here to be able to advance this debate and scale it, as you were saying, maybe take it to a different level altogether, hopefully with a very positive impact on the laws and policies related to governance and management and conservation of the commons. Similarly, also could become a space where the extent of recognition of rights of the local communities, whether it is as part of the Forest Rights Act or maybe through other laws, all of it being reflected in one space, which I don't think there exists one right now in India, where perhaps what is the status of recognition of rights of the commons in the communities, what are the concerns and the limitations, struggles that the communities are facing while trying to recognize their rights, would be a very important, valuable contribution of this space. And if we can also debate, sort of generate debates or facilitate discussions on those aspects, that could also perhaps be immensely useful towards rights-based approaches to livelihood security, food security, community health security, gender and youth rights, and conservation rights and outcomes, both in practice and policy. Personally, I really connected very well with Purnendu's conversation in the beginning, comment on in the beginning about all of us being part of the space. I think a forum like this, particularly if it manages to engage the local people and all of us in being able to relate our own stories, being able to speak in our own language, in our own ways of expression, could become a very important sort of space for self-reflection, particularly for women, men, youth in the communities as well. It could become a space for internal discussions, reflections, intergenerational exchanges as well, particularly about their commons, the histories of their commons, the knowledge systems that have existed and are changing and why, the biocultural realities around that. I think it could be a very strong connecting force. I'm not sure whether how much time, effort, energy it takes, but if through this forum, those who are engaged, all of us perhaps could also create or facilitate some such discussion, at least in few areas, it will be a great achievement of the forum. I think I would stop here. There's a lot to say, but I'm quite excited. I hope it's a very ambitious forum, and I hope we manage to continue to find resources to sustain it over a period of time, because it will definitely require many people to engage and many resources to be contributing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for those valuable insights and inputs. We'll definitely be working on those. Now we invite Ruth Meinzendick, who has over 25 years of experience in transdisciplinary research. She's currently a senior research fellow at IFPRI, that's International Food Policy Research Institute, and she's a coordinator of the CGIAR program on collective action and property rights. Ma'am, whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. This has been a real delight to be part of the overall promise of commons, and especially the Commoner Forum. And I thank FES for taking up this idea and championing it. Is it possible for me to pick up on that theme of how this is different and how we have been inspired by the commons? Is it possible for me, I'd like to, if possible, share a couple of pictures of why I am so passionate about the commons. Although I may not look like it, I actually grew up in Tamil Nadu near Vallur, and this was the view from behind where we lived, which I didn't know it at the time, that this is almost all commons. And like so many people, I might have thought that this was barren and, you know, the idea of wasteland, except that my father loved this country just deeply, and he would take me out in the evenings to follow the shepherds as they would bring the sheep back and open the baskets and let the lambs meet up. And I saw that this land that seemed abandoned and waste was actually teeming with life and so important, not only for their livelihoods, but I love that aspect of being there with the lambs, meeting up with their mothers. My dad would also take me, we had a scooter, and he would take me across the tank foreshore. And even though it was sometimes scary getting chased by the water buffalo that were grazing there, I just, you know, the way that came to life with the monsoons. And so when I went back for my master's thesis, and I decided I wanted to learn more about how those tanks were managed, that got me really started on learning about the way communities managed these shared resources and how vital they were. So that's been my passion on this. Now we've been doing some studies with FES that really, that may look like, oh, okay, that's a nice isolated piece. But when you put it together, this is a map of the areas that are officially recognized as commons. And you see that they're really spread out. The darker areas are the higher concentrations. It's forests, it's what's classified as barren land, permanent pasture, cultivable wastelands, but lots of ecosystem services for these commons. With FES, we've just done a major study of the ecosystem services, finding that there's 12 kind of provisioning services, not only the non-timber forest products, medicines, fuel wood, timber, fodder, honey, things like that. The regulating services, the pollination, climate regulation that support agriculture and these other areas, the supporting services of the habitat for species, nutrient cycling, and the cultural services, not only recreation and tourism, religious sacred values, all of that. So we have then we aggregated the values of this across all the hundreds of studies that have been done in India and come up with an estimate of that the average value of ecosystem services from the commons is $90.5 billion US per year. And of that, 43 billion is just those direct provisioning services. So these are not trivial matters. It's really important. And if we compare it to agriculture, for example, agriculture has an estimated 271 billion gross value from 159 million hectares, but the commons are contributing $90 billion from 66.5 million hectares. So we really see that there is an important value of all of this. But I think numbers may be important. Numbers are important. And as a researcher, I hope to contribute to that. But I think we need to shift the narrative and get it in people's heads that these are valuable. And to the extent that people can not only put words and numbers, but pictures, stories. I love Jagdish's example of each community member telling how they are connected to this story. So I really welcome the Indian commoner. And just to say that just yesterday I was communicating with Tina Demure, who is very excited about this because they have a similar activity of the Dutch commoner, and she wants to connect these activities. So I look forward to participating more in this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And thanks again to all the panelists for taking out the time from the busy schedules and addressing us all. As we come towards the end of the session, we'd like to open the floor to all the commoners present here to share their views or to raise their questions. You may raise your hand, or if you'd like it, or you can also post it on the chat box. Punendra sir, would you like to address the gathering and share some thoughts, sir?
Thank you to each one of you who have found the time to join us in this launch. I am well aware how busy everybody is and how much of digital time we have endured. So I really appreciate what everybody has come. I do hope that in the times ahead, we will be able to connect in more individual, personalized ways with everybody. And I'm thankful to Ruth and Jagdish and Mrs. Thorat, all Ashok and Nima, especially for joining. They are part of our advisory group.
One question.
I do hope it is quite possible that there are some questions that people have in mind, but it's sudden, and going through the Indian Commoner is a little bit of a, it can't be done in such a direct manner, so I can understand it. I just thought that I can briefly share with you how we plan to proceed, some of the things that we plan to proceed. We are now entering a phase where we are on the one hand, working in a digital mode where people like you and me can register and join. But we are also taking our outreach to village communities. We are having individual meetings with organizations that work directly with communities. And right now, only in Hindi, only in Rajasthan. But gradually, we hope that we can get more people to start using it. It's in some ways a wonderful experience, these little meetings that we have had, because what Jagdish has said is exactly what we're seeing happening. Somebody tells a little story and we give them the confidence to say, hey, just put it down. And then somebody takes up the same story and says, we have something similar with a variation. So I feel if, as and when our forum gets populated, we will start getting a more granulated, more sophisticated, in some ways, with more information content about the daily practices, cultures, values, and norms that go up to making a common and making a relationship between people and their commons. I don't know if maybe some of the other panelists, if they have anything to say. I can also ask people to ask questions directly by raising their hands, or we can respond to some of the comments that have come.
Yes, sir. So one of the questions that we've received is from Arup Dasgupta, sir. And he's asking, how easy do you think it is for a commoner to access this information on the forum?
It is at the present stage not easy because it is in English. I feel we have tried to make the structure of the forum something that a relatively, let's say, first generation, a new person. So it's not a very sophisticated structure. 3 steps is all it takes to move from one level to another. But until we have a regional language capability, I would say it is not yet accessible. But as Jagdish has told me, this is the beginning of our exercise. It is now, I think the real challenges will lie ahead. So thank you for your questions. I do hope you can join us and help us take this process forward.
So Kalyan sir also had a question here. So could you please unmute and share your thought?
Yeah, I see the question of Mr. Kalyan Paul. I think others are all, Jagdish perhaps, and Nima perhaps is in a better position to talk about it, as would be Ashok to respond to this. I think we will have to go for the low-hanging fruit to begin with. Once we can have a certain critical mass of conversations going on, it is possible that people who would otherwise be hesitant, such as those who are from government departments, might want to enter the conversation. Although the likelihood is that probably people who may have retired are more likely to enter into conversation. But we want to engage with everybody. We certainly would try to engage with others. I don't know how Ashok and Nima and Jagdish, their experience has been in this.
Could you read out the question? I don't see it in the chat.
I don't see the question somehow.
Pooja, can you read it out?
So perhaps he sent it through direct chat. So That's why I
Yeah,
asked
I'll read it
Kalyan
out.
sir if you can unmute, or you can read it.
Considering much of the commons is under direct control of state governments, do we have sufficient staff from forest and other concerned departments in the forum? That was the question. And that is what I responded to.
I would say, I don't really know the current participation levels in the Indian commoner. The ambition of the Promise of Commons, as we conceived it about a couple of years ago, was to have these connections between practitioners, enablers, and influencers, and that would bring a range of people from academia to bureaucracy to media, technology, and so on, and can create this conversation so that there is that infrastructure, the social infrastructure, which is necessary for addressing climate action or biodiversity conservation. So that was an ambition. At the current state, I do not know how many, but in the way that I am planning my next version is definitely to bring such actors together, uh, build conversations, even if there's no full agreement.
I think that's a very important point, Jagdish, to be able to talk even when you are not completely in agreement. That is, I see it as that kind of a space.
There's one last question that I'd like to present to all the panelists here. If the last question has been answered and no one wants to add to that. Gautam sir is asking that some of the best minds and advocates of commons are convened here in this room. Could we list in what ways we have made advances in protecting the commons and how much farther do we have to go? It's a heavy question.
It depends on what your time scale is. I mean, if I go back to the 80s, when Jodha's work was just starting, talking about the commons was being an idiosyncratic kind of engagement. So I think the kind of space that commons has now carved for itself over a period of 25, 30 years is a reflection of the efforts that have gone into, and people you're referring to are the ones who have started this. They are the ones who have contributed to this process. Perhaps Ruth might want to say something like that.
Yeah, with that kind of a time span, I think since Dr. Nitin Desai is in the audience, when FES took up to host the International Association for Study of the Commons meeting, I think that brought greater attention both within India and I think globally, it helped to shift the attention to the need for engagement in policies on the commons, that just this body of research that was going on about the importance was not enough. What I really appreciate about the people in this virtual forum is this engagement at the community level, at the district and state level in the implementation, as well as in the setting of policies at higher levels. But I think one of the really important things that I appreciate about this commoner forum is that a lot of that ultimately hinges on getting everyday people to recognize this and to appreciate the importance of commons in their own lives, and including urban commons. I think we need more attention to that, because as people aspire to more urban lifestyles, recognizing where commons comes in to connect us to each other and to nature and to to higher goals is really important. So I hope that the Indian Commoner Forum can really help us to engage in that way.
I should jump in. Jagdish here. A nice question. I don't know. Depends on the lens which we look at, through which we look. See, if I look at the general society as such, then perhaps on the Creative Commons, the Wikipedia of sorts, the new commons as some call it, I think there's been a revolution, even in Linux, which is a technology kind of domain. Strangely, that's happening with youth and in a very different kind of space altogether, while the biophysical resources and the commoning there probably is not so great. However, I think it's necessary to mention that more and more countries, South America, Southeast Asia, including India, the Forest Rights Act, at least the recognition of commons has firmly been put up in policy and legal spaces. So there is both things happening. I think if we have to talk across the time, then yeah, in the 3 decades that I've been following this, maybe the last decade, there were several positive developments in the biophysical spaces internationally. Now, how does policy action translate into palpable ground level action? I think people like all of us should join in to see that it actually makes a difference in everybody's life on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone. Before we close the session, there's a short question that I'd like Punendu sir to answer. The question was to Punendu sir and the IC team as well, anyone who can take it, that what's the timeline when the portal will be fully functional?
The portal is fully functional. It is becoming, as we are beginning to use it, we find that there are limitations which we had not anticipated, and we have to address it. It's going to be an iterative process. I suppose the forum will grow in time, but as of now, it is functional. You can use it, you can register it, you can write your views, and you can comment, you can read the materials, you can upload your videos, you can take a photograph. It is fully operational in that sense, which is why we're launching it.
Thank you, sir. So with this, we come to an end to this delightful and insightful session. I thank all the panelists for their time and all the commoners for listening in. Please feel free to write to us with your thoughts, comments, suggestions, and questions at communications@indiancommoner.org. The Indian Commoner website, as Sir has said, is now live, and the link has been posted on the chat box. So from the Indian Commoner team, I wish all of you a happy Earth Day. I urge all of you to sign up, explore the forum, and build a dream with us towards the promise of commons. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to all.
Thank you, Man. Thank you.
Thanks everyone, and all the best to the team.
Thank you, Shan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yogesh. Thank you so much.